Hello there. So nice that you could tune in. What a beautiful day we have here, and you can hear the birds and the owls and see the flowers. It's just absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? This is one of the positive sides of lockdown, and to say that I live right next to the airport, it's very quiet right now. But anyways, I want to talk about foundations and the shakings that are taking place at the moment. Hebrews 12 verse 26 to 27 says this: "Yet once more I shake not only the earth but also heaven." Now this "yet once more" indicates the removal of those things that are being shaken, as of things that are made, that the things which cannot be shaken may remain. So, as we've said before, there's a shaking going on, and this shaking is going to shake everything. But what's going to be remaining is that which cannot be shaken, which of course is a substance of a different kingdom. So this question came to me: what can be shaken then? Well, everything that is made. And as I was thinking about that, I thought about Matthew 7 and verse 24 to 27, and of course we all know it's about the house that was built on the sand and the house that was built on the rock. And this is what Jesus said. He said, "Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand." So in other Gospels, it's of two houses, and the rain and the wind and the storms comes to both houses, the one that is on the sand and the one that is on the rock. And so they both go through the same elements, but of course the one that's built on the sand disappears. So we must be founded on the rock if we're going to be solid. Foundation has to be laid. And I've spoken about this numerous times, and I've written a couple of books about this very thing as well. But we could say there's the presence of Jesus, and there's principles of Jesus, and the power of Jesus. So there's these three things. And of course we know that some people love the principles of Jesus. There's churches that are just founded on the word, and then there's other churches that love the presence of Jesus and really don't put very much emphasis on the word. But actually, the words of Jesus flow from his presence and are established in your life only when you do them, as you choose to do. His presence is established in and through his principles. So when you have both his presence and his principles, you're automatically hooked into his power. Just because someone knows of the foundation, so we're talking about foundations, just because someone knows of the foundation, that doesn't mean that he or she is built on that foundation. It's like Jesus is this solid, so you could say he's like a throne. He's established, he's a solid. There's something solid about Jesus. And yet, he's flexible, he's translucent, he's transparent, he's river-like. And we have these metaphors in the Bible. You know, we hear about the presence of Jesus flowing from the throne. So there's the establishment of the throne, and then there's this river-like life as well. Well, these two things have got to come together so that we're solid inside, but actually that solidness can move into flexibility like a river of life. And it's an interesting thought that the foundation of God may very well have this solidness in it, but yes, it's this flow as well. So it's like, and I don't mean, but it's like a cement, a special kind of cement that is solid but at the same time moving. It's mixed. The foundation then is mixed and it's ready to be poured. There is no other foundation than that which is already given, which is Jesus. So it's mixed and it's ready to be poured. But it has to be laid. So it's a little bit like if we were building a house. We'd have the material with which to build it, but it would need to be laid. And of course, you need someone who knows about building and architecture to build a solid house. And this is what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 10 and 11. He said, according to the grace, the special endowment for my task, that God bestowed upon me, like a skillful architect and master builder, I laid the foundation, and now another man is building upon it. For no other foundation can anyone lay than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One, or the Transformer. So Paul's basically saying that he's a master builder, he's an architect, he's been given this grace, and it's as though he's got there a cement that's ready to be laid in the house. It's there, it's the one that God's given to be laid, but Paul has got to lay it. Well, of course, we can know about a foundation, but we've got to allow him to lay that foundation on the inside of us, all of us. And of course, this is what we teach and what we say continually. Both Jesus and Paul are unequivocal. Hearing what he says and doing it, it's only that as we find ourselves doing that we find ourselves in him. He gives us the grace and the strength to follow through. Anything not built on the foundation will fail. Anything that's not built on that foundation will fail. It's not a matter of it might do, it might not. Jesus just said, if it's not built on a firm foundation, on a rock, and he is the rock, then it will fail. It's not like a question. It's a fact. It's going to fail if it's not built that way. Both houses go through the same storm. Believing does not mean storm-free. Both go through the same shakings. So let's have a look at some things that are going to be shaken then. Well, individual lives can be shaken. Sickness, poverty, broken marriage, job loss, people giving up, not finding strength to withstand the problems. That's individuals. Shaken. Households can be shaken. Whole households can be shaken in the same way. Every household that's divided against itself can be shaken. Institutions can be shaken. Banks can be shaken. Businesses can be shaken. Governments can be shaken. Religious institutions can be shaken. Basically, everything can be shaken and will be shaken. And it's in order that another kingdom might appear, that something that cannot be shaken will appear from it. So we see that material structures can be shaken. I know that sometimes people have used the verse in, I believe it's Isaiah somewhere, that says that every high tower is going to be shaken, and of course they use that when the Twin Towers fell. In the end, the loftiness of man is going to be bowed down. The arrogance, the ignorance, the pride that man comes before God with is going to be bowed down. The whole earth will be shaken. In Revelation 6 and verse 12 it says, every mountain and island is moved out of its place. According to Matthew 24, heavenly bodies will be shaken. In other words, the sun, the moon, the stars. The powers of the heavens will be shaken. So this is everything that can be shaken will be shaken. But you and I have something that cannot be shaken. What is it? Well, it's the kingdom of God. But you've got to know what kingdom it is that's coming through. Your destiny is at stake. I often think about the seeings of Isaiah. Isaiah was a prophet, he was a seer, he saw things. And half the book of Isaiah is filled with doomsday scenarios and disasters. Half of it is filled with pictures and visions of heavenly hope. I mean, really, it is nearly half and half. But when it starts out, it's seriously bad. And I've been looking through this last few weeks at some of the chapters. This is what it says in chapter 1. There is no soundness or health in the nation's body. No one is troubled to seek a remedy. Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourselves and make yourselves clean. Put away the evil of your doings. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Relieve the oppressed and correct the oppressor. Defend the fatherless and plead for the widow. Your princes are rebels and companions of thieves. This is talking about the leadership in Israel at that time. I will restore your judges as at first and your counselors as at the beginning. In chapter 3 it says this, they proclaim their sin like Sodom, they do not hide it. Woe to them, for they have brought evil as a reward upon themselves. Your leaders cause you to err and confuse and destroy and swallow up the course of your paths. And it goes on and on like this for possibly 20 chapters. I mean, to be honest, it's quite depressing. But this is some of what Isaiah was seeing as he looked at what was happening in Israel and in the surrounding nations. And if this carries on, if people carry on choosing these ways, then I'm telling you that this is what is going to happen. I mean, Lamentations, and of course Adam spent time looking at Lamentations and gleaning some beautiful treasure out of Lamentations. But look at this, chapter 1 in verse 5, it says, because of the multitude of her transgressions, her children have gone into captivity. She did not consider her destiny, therefore her collapse was awesome. And that's in 1:9 of Jeremiah. And he was another who was seeing things. Early on then, the problems diagnosed. Transgressions, wrongs, things not right. Now, listen, it's important that we understand, when we say this word sin, what is sin? Sin is everything that does not flow from the heart and the mind of God. Everything that does not flow from his heart and his mind. The word that we use to encapsulate that is sin. So, transgressions, wrongs, things that are not right, actions, behaviours, attitudes, motivations. Destiny not considered. When you don't know your destiny and you have no purpose, there's no longevity, there's no prosperity for the future. And when you think about the government, what does every government think of? 4 years. Its term. Well, that's not longevity. That's not thinking of destiny. Now, me and you, we need to think about destiny. We need to think about things afar, things for our children and our children's children. Things need to change. The things that are happening now are screaming to us about the necessity for change, for transformation. Isaiah 24, this is what it says in Isaiah 24. And again, it's depressing reading, but we need to read it and we need to understand. Behold, the Lord makes the earth empty and makes it waste, distorts its surface and scatters abroad its inhabitants. And it shall be, as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the creditor, so with the debtor. The land shall be entirely emptied and utterly plundered, for the Lord has spoken this word. Wealth and social position cannot provide security. The earth will be emptied and plundered. Do you understand me? he's seeing a sight where he's going, what's going to happen? It doesn't discern between the wealthy and the poor. It doesn't discern between this status and that status. It's not a discerner. When shaking comes, it shakes everybody. And you, just like I, need to know what foundation we're really built on. And we need to begin to think about it seriously. Because they have transgressed the laws, disorder. The earth is also defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, and broken the everlasting covenant. Wow, those are big things. So laws have been changed, legislations have been changed, ordinances have been changed, covenants have been broken. That's why the earth's defiled. So, it's a pretty dire picture. But it's a true picture, and it's what Isaiah saw. In amongst all of that, and this is the beautiful thing, he sees something else. He sees someone else. He gets visions of words of one who is going to come, who would alter everything completely, utterly, incredibly, going to alter everything. The one, of course, who he was seeing in the vision, who he was seeing in the dreams, had not yet come. But he did come. He lived, he died, and he rose again. And all the things that he did, he finished them, he accomplished them. He's not going to do anything else. It's all been done. Everything has been done and finished. And then he brought in a new covenant. He didn't alter the old covenant, he brought in a brand new covenant. In fact, he brought in a whole new age. The new age started when Jesus arrived on the earth, which is what he said to the lady in Samaria, from Samaria, who he met at the well. He said, today is a new age. Today, this is a new moment. And you can read it, John chapter 4. The truth is, he made it possible that everything could change. The one that Isaiah saw came. He's done what he needs to do. He's now made it possible that everything can change. The restorer and transformer of death and life itself, he came. Nothing needs to remain the same. Nothing. I want to be honest with you that during these weeks I've sometimes been screaming in frustration, experiencing a range of emotions, which I'm sure that many of us have. Powerful feelings from hopelessness to deep sadness and grief, and then breaking into a joy as I'm reminded of what Jesus has done, as I'm reminded of a beautiful future that he's already made possible. But I've gone through a range of emotions. And sometimes I've screamed out like this, no, I don't accept that it has to be the way that everybody thinks it's going to be. And of course, I don't know if you understand, but many people believe that this is the last days that we're living in. Well, I believe that there's a bright future. Our future's not happened yet. I have children, I have grandchildren. We've not seen the kingdom come in the way that we've believed and expected. And I've not seen the Lord's Prayer answered yet. Our future is still forming, and we are still choosing its outcome. You are choosing its outcome. This is a serious moment. And I screamed out to the Lord and I said, I don't believe that this is the end. I believe it's the end of something and the beginning of something completely, totally and utterly beautiful. And I choose life and life and life, and I'll never stop choosing life. What do you choose? What do you really believe? What kingdom is really coming? What are your children's children? What future do they have? Have you thought about some of these questions? These are big questions, and we need to start thinking about them seriously, all of us. As I said on Sunday as I was preaching, that if anything's going to wake us up, surely this is going to wake us up. We're going to wake up from our slumber. We're going to wake up from a state of unreality. We live in some kind of unreality, and we need to wake up and go, what is actually going on? Do we understand what's at stake? As we come through this, what will have changed? Have you changed? Have your habits changed? Your thinking? Your actions? What's actually changed about your life? Will you just want to go back to normal? And if so, what was so good about normal? Did you look at normal and see what you've got? What God's blessed you with? Did you see the things about normal that were not so good? The parts that were filled with a self-consumed you. Did you see those parts? Because somehow when we come out of this, and we will come out of it, we have to begin to look seriously at what has changed and what we want to change. A little while ago, as I was walking through the fields just over here, because I'm surrounded by fields and I can walk through them, they're beautiful. As I walked through, I was talking to Jesus, as I frequently do, and I was musing. And I've mused with Matt and Adam, and Matt sat behind the camera here. And I've mused and thought, you know, we've spent hours. I cannot begin to tell you the hours that I spend praying and talking with Jesus on your behalf. I cannot tell you the hours that I spend in this word, not only for me, but for all those people around me. And then I look, and I should never do it, and I should be past it by now, shouldn't I? But this just tells you a little bit about my own vulnerability. I look at the numbers and see that there's 16, 18, 20 people that have read something, or that have watched something, or that have heard that we spend hours preparing and getting ready for you to watch. And of course, I'm like everybody else. I'm just human like everybody else. And as I'm talking to Jesus about this, just pondering it all the time, I felt like he broke into my thoughts. I felt like Jesus broke into my thoughts really strongly with a parable that he once told, and I want to just read it to you. Blessed is he. Jesus is sat in the house of a Pharisee, and he's eating together with them. And the Pharisee says to Jesus, blessed is he who shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then Jesus said to him, a certain man gave a great supper, invited many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, come, for all things are now ready. But they all with one accord began to make excuses. The first said to him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must go and see it. I ask you to have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I am going to test them. I ask you to have me excused. Still another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in here the poor, and the maimed, and the lame, and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it is done as you have commanded, and still there is room. Then the master said to the servant, go out into the highways and the hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say to you that none of these men who were invited shall taste my supper. And when of course, I remembered it as I was walking, but then I read it just as I've read it to you. And of course, Jesus is talking about the supper. He's eating bread. He is the bread of life. And now he's got people sat at supper with him who've been invited, and they're eating the bread. And this bread, as we eat it, becomes one with us. And it's all ready. Everything's ready. Not only the bread, but all the riches, all the treasures are on the table already. And of course, this great supper is about Jesus sharing his life with those he invited. You and I have been invited. We got the invite. Excuses. None of the things that Jesus mentioned are wrong in themselves. He knows that we're going to be involved in all of these things. But when the things that he has blessed us with become stumbling blocks to knowing him, then we are faced with a real and a present danger. Think about this, the ground, the things, that equals the things that we do. Building, property, garden, buying, real estate, all these things that we're doing. The oxen, the mechanics of our working life, our working habits, the way that we do what we do. Marriage is all about relationship. Marriage is the most intimate and the closest relationship. And marriage is I think in one of the passages it says that they just got married. So of course that's going to be surely an excuse not to be at the feast. But Jesus doesn't seem to think it is an excuse not to be at the feast. In fact, none of these things are an excuse not to be where the bread of life is. All of these things were God-given things, but used as excuses not to be with him, to receive his life. Well, I've got to say, I can see, as I look, I see that people spend time on all sorts of things. I only have to look on Facebook to see the time that people spend looking at things, that some things may be good, but looking at things and spending time on things that are not going to benefit anything to do with their foundational life or their future life. And at some point we have got to begin to ask ourselves questions that are serious in nature about what we are doing with our time. You know, in 2 Timothy and chapter 3 it talks about perilous times, dangerous and desperate times. And I don't want to go into all of that, but basically it's broken down into these three things. That we become lovers of self, of money and of pleasure, instead of becoming lovers of God. And we are invited to become lovers of God, to sit with him, to eat with him, to feast at his table. So, shaking causes us to awaken. Those who are dead will awaken. Those who are sleeping will arise. That which is within a believer as well is going to shake. It's important that you know your identity and that you are secure in him. It's incredibly vital at this time. Being able to deal with yourself in his light and by his spirit. It's important that the things which have been prepared within you, you have many things that are prepared within you already. And there are things that have been stored within you before you ever got here. These things somehow have got to come up and out of you and bring you into a new moment. Not only for your sake, but for your children's sake, for your grandchildren's sake. These things, we have to begin to search them out in God. But I have said this, that what's inside you can shake everything else outside of you. Foundations can begin to shift. Gates and doors will begin to open, just like Paul and Silas in prison. They were calling for light, and everything around began to shake. Why did everything around begin to shake? Because inside, what was inside, the resurrection power of Jesus, the life of Jesus, began to move inside, outside, and it caused a shaking. This time is going to be a reawakening, a reset, a restoration, and a refreshing of sorts. We know that that is what's going to happen. The earth is speaking to us. It's actually been groaning. It's been in pain for many years. We've seen it sometimes exploding from within. Earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, famines. It's groaning. It's groaning in earnest expectation for the revealing of the sons of God. Now listen, you are a child of God, but you are also a son of God. This whole creation is waiting for all of us to awaken out of our slumber and to begin to walk in what God has actually put within us. Prayer's coming forth. Persistent prayer, beautiful, it's good. But faith needs to join it. Faith. And be under no shadow of a doubt, the earth belongs to God. The nations belong to Jesus. The devil owns nothing and is a liar, a thief, and a destroyer. He's a murderer. He's a killer. He's interested only in control for power. He loves profit for himself. Status and reputation drips off him. He has no legal right to anything at all. Nothing. Jesus has stripped everything from him on the cross. The only right he has is a person believing a lie. He lives in the lie. He is a liar. He's the father of lies. His breath smells of lies, of murder, of destruction. That's his DNA. This reawakening shakes us and brings us to the real truth that we are one with the Father, sons of God. When Jesus told them that he was the Son of God, the Son of God, they wanted to kill him. His identity was powerful. Your identity is powerful. He was declaring who he'd always been from before the foundation of the world. Being a son is the key. One with him. This is hated. The hope of glory within. Understanding what's within you is key. Looking for the consequence and results of that. It's a revolution that can happen. But you've got to begin to understand it. We are moving towards the restoration of all things. But maybe it doesn't look like the way that we think it's going to look. It's not all wrapped up in a nice theology like a novel. It's not. And though we may think we know the time, perhaps the time between the times is longer than we think. And maybe we should just get on with the job in hand. What did Jesus say? Acts 1, verse 8. Therefore, when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom of Israel? And he said to them, It is not for you to know times or seasons, which the Father has put in his own authority. But you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Listen, let's make sure that the foundation has been poured and that it's strong. Now, there is much teaching. There's much that's been said about these things. But it's for you to take some time, in this time, and make sure that you know your foundation is strong. The internal foundation. And then as we do that, we need to think about what are we coming through this time with? What has changed? What's different about us? What questions have we asked ourselves? What is different now to what it was before? What do we want to be different? Where do we want to go? What is your life really all about? What are we going to have as our future? Do we choose life? Are we looking for a destiny and a purpose? What do we really want? Take some time to check out your foundation and where you really want to go. And be blessed.